us on a voyage into Calgary's world of eSports. Esports is a growing billion-dollar industry where gaming is taken to a whole new level. It is competitive, it's online, or in person. Bringing gamers together, it's where gaming reaps big monetary prizes. Here is where we unravel the city's vibrant esports scene, reshape any false perceptions, and learn to celebrate the positive impact of the gaming community.
3, 2, 1.
Let's make it a total eclipse.
Hi there, I'm Jordan Lee, gamer, esports enthusiast, and your host for Total Eclipse. In this episode, we will find out exactly what goes into coordinating the esports tournaments we love so much. Let's delve right in to the anatomy of esports tournaments.
My name's Steven. I'm a tournament organizer here in the Calgary Smash Bros scene. I've been doing tournament organizing for a few years now, and I'm just here to share some things about what that looks like. I guess my first exposure with esports would have been early on in high school, playing StarCraft 2. That was kind of where I first, fell in love with esports as a genre, as opposed to traditional sports and just the idea of competition in that environment. And then from there, I started playing Super Smash Bros. Melee in 2018. And then as COVID kind of was coming towards an end, started to take a bigger role in helping out with some of the events here in Calgary.
My name is Zane. I first joined the tournament scene in 2017, and nowadays I help with running tournaments in Calgary, both as a supporting role as well as just running some of my own stuff. I started playing video games when I was really young, probably when I was 5 or 6, because I had an older brother who got consoles. But my first tournament was in 2017. I just kind of searched up Calgary Smash Bros tournaments, and then I came across one, and I did really bad because I was pretty bad at the time. I went 0-2, didn't win a single game. But it was a great experience. I got to meet a lot of people, and they were really welcoming. They were quick to kind of bring me in and say help me out, get better. Let me be in the scene as if I've been there for a long time, and so it was a great experience there.
Scoot or Whiskey. My tag's Scooter Whiskey. From way up north, actually. I went to my first tournament when I was probably about 12 with my sister, and I guess that's something we bonded over a lot. And so, actually, my 4th grade gym teacher is the one who ran the first tournament in my town, and so we kind of knew about it through there. And my sister brought me, and I was like, whoa, playing to other people for money in a video game, that's so cool. So I kind of just, dived headfirst in from there. I've just been running events here for a few years now. Kind of became second family to me. Is play a lot, go to a lot of tournaments, and all across America just competing. As a player, I've gotten pretty far, in the theoretical top 200, it's oh, I was there. Sometime next year, I'd like to be ranked top 100.
Wow, that's a good goal.
When we talk about running a tournament, there's 2 very different types of events. The first would be what we run all the time, which would be weekly or bi-weekly or monthly events. And those are events which are very, very community focused, making sure that we provide the best experience. Those events kind of have maintained, within the Smash scene, maintained a fairly similar trajectory over the last few years. We've definitely made some strides in terms of targeting players who are newer or maybe not as comfortable in a competitive environment, and making sure that there are avenues for them to feel welcomed into that space as well. And then on the other side of things, there's kind of larger, what we would describe as a regional tournament, which is designed to basically bring out as many people as possible from all over the place.
What are the key steps involved in planning an esports tournament from start to finish?
For starters, you need to make sure that you have a venue. There's kind of this meme, I guess, of TO brain, because you just walk into spaces and you're already thinking about, okay, where is my stream setup going to live? You know, how many setups can I get going in terms of, you know, how many TVs, how many, because I play Melee, we have to play them on old CRTs.
Oh yeah.
So managing the equipment and getting the venue sorted. We've hosted lots of events in cafes and coffee shops and bars. And once you have the venue, then from there you need to get it, I guess, kind of in tandem with getting the venue would be getting the date. If you are targeting a larger audience from, you know, out of region as well, making sure that there aren't established events, you know, major tournaments that might be happening around North America that you might want to avoid. Once you kind of have your venue sorted out, you're going to want to build some form of registration page. So for Smash, we use a website called StartGG, and that manages most everything in terms of the registration and, you know, competitive aspect of the actual tournament itself. That's pretty much the standard across fighting games for player registration, accepting payment as well. When we run a tournament, usually there would be a venue fee and an event fee. And so a venue fee is to cover any costs that are associated with the event. Then the event fee, basically, which is entirely dedicated to the prize pool. And so the top competitors, so if we get 20 people who pay a $5 venue fee, then there's a $100 pot, and that would get split amongst the top 3 to 6 players. And so that's kind of a way to encourage those top level players to come out. And some companies aren't comfortable with basically being involved in that process of accepting payment for those like tournament winnings. I would say just to anybody who is looking to host a larger event to make sure that all of your kind of legal ground is covered and making sure that any financial partners that you might have are in place and everything is all good to go on that front. Yeah, and then from there, basically sponsors is the next thing from there. Depending on the scale of the event that you're looking for, you're going to need to market that event in some way. So on social media, our community uses Discord a lot, we use Twitter a lot. That's kind of the 2 spaces where our communities are kind of gathered the most. And from there, it's kind of word of mouth. On a larger scale, you may want to reach out to top players. When we hosted Empty Hop, I reached out to a few players that were not from Calgary. One of the top players in the world, whose tag is Joshman, plays Super Smash Bros. Melee, I believe ranked 11th in the world right now. Reached out to him. We have one of the top players in the world who lives in Calgary, so that really helped out. Sunsei is 9th in the world, and you know, it helps to add some legitimacy to your event when, you know, there are already established top players who can kind of get behind that event. Yeah, and then kind of from there, you know, making sure you have all your equipment necessary. We had 250 entrants for Empty Hop. For our 2-day event, we needed around 25 setups for both Ultimate and Melee.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of things you got to do.
There's a lot to think about.
Big brain stuff right there. What are different roles that they have? Like, can you briefly, you know, cover those for us?
Different roles can be covered by like a single person, but depending on the size of the event, again, you may not need to focus as much on one role or the other. So for example, for our weekly events, our marketing really comes down to making a single post or 2 posts on a couple of different platforms to basically inform people, hey, this is what's happening, this is where it's going to be, this is what time it's going to be at. But for a larger scale event like Empty Hop, that role is a lot more critical, making sure that people are aware and, you know, reaching out to communities outside of our kind of little niche. And other roles, you need somebody who's going to be able to coordinate with the venue, and so that includes, is there any equipment that's on site that needs to be handled? You need somebody who can coordinate with like the technical aspect. I guess I could say like a production manager almost. So that would be somebody who would manage all of the, you know, stream, all of the different aspects in terms of audio in-house and over the internet. Coordinating with stream partners. There's the actual kind of, I guess I want to say, scheduling or registration aspect of it, managing, you know, how are people going to actually register on the website, what kind of events are they going to be connected to, and is there a limit to how many events that they need to be connected to make sure that the event finishes on time. On the day of, there's what we
People
would call,
to greet the guests.
yeah,
and
people who would
type of thing.
check in.
Yeah.
People we call pool captains for a larger event, basically who are responsible for calling and reporting matches that happen between players. And then for larger events, we also have commentators and stuff like that. For smaller events, usually it's just basically if you're not playing a set, you can hop on the mic and commentate what's happening on the screen. So I think that covers most of the things that you're asking about.
So people like helping with scheduling, marketing, just greeting the people, organizing where the people go, and potentially commentators on a larger scale.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great to know. You mentioned Empty Hop, which I assume you were like a lead coordinator on. Who else was part of it, and what other tournaments have you coordinated?
Yeah, Empty Hop was a team of 3 or 4 of us. Scoot was very critical in terms of being a close partner and doing a lot of the marketing for the event.
For Empty Hop, it was I was kind of getting out of the organizing role a little bit at that point, so it was like, okay, Steven, I'm gonna like handle the marketing for this, and I'm gonna like coordinate all your volunteers. And besides that, I want like day of, I want to show up and I want to play the game, which didn't even end up happening. I still ended up running some stuff, but it's like I get to do like so much more behind the scenes work, which is I think where I tend to really excel. Is like, a lot of the advertising is me, like a lot of like the marketing, a lot of like, hey, would you like to be a volunteer? We need this many people for these many jobs. That's a lot of me. And yeah, that's something I helped coordinate a lot. Earlier this year, I believe April, I ran the Arcadian, which is like a tournament where everyone who's ever been ranked is just banned. They're not allowed to enter. So it's basically, they tend to get a lot of entrants. It's the chance for like all the newbies and all the people who've been playing a lot, but maybe haven't reached the very top yet, to like, get their time to shine and maybe, actually win a tournament.
I love that.
Yeah.
Definitely also have helped out in a lot of those bigger tournaments. You'll find when it comes to those bigger regional tournaments where they're having 100 plus people, 200 people coming in, it really helps to just have an extra pair of hands for different roles. I know with Steven, like at Empty Hop, he already had his hands full with so much stuff, coordinating the whole event, talking with all the players, and he has to see a bunch of the events, right? So it just helps to have, for example, me, like I would run a single side event, and then I would just take care of that, and then he wouldn't have to think about that. I would just be in charge of that. Or just in general, in a lot of other tournaments, it helps to just have those people running different smaller sections of the tournament so that the main TO, whoever's the head in charge of the event, can take the lead of things, not worry too much about, there's this side event that I have to go and deal with as well, or this going on over there. There's just already people that they can trust just taking care of those. And that's, I think, a role I find myself in a lot, is I've run a couple of some bigger scale tournaments, but I definitely lean towards just enjoying more, just being a supporting role and helping out these bigger events just really thrive and succeed, is what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and also I guess we could talk about the fact that I think both of us actually have now we just have like competent graphic design portfolios because we've been doing this for so long, and like have just had to do so much of the marketing on our own because a lot of it is volunteer. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a skill we both have now.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite things about running tournaments is getting to decide a theme for the tournament and coming up with the graphics for it and then putting it together. That's actually definitely one of my favorites. And the results graphics as well for like who placed the top 8 players or something like that, right? It's really cool.
I think that people underrate how much work it is to put in a really quality production. So I think that was one thing that in hosting future large events, I definitely would like to improve on, is making sure that the stream quality, the viewer experience is something that's prioritized as well.
So like, I'm sure equipment varies, for which video game the tournament's for. Like the TVs, the gaming consoles, video games themselves.
Yeah.
What else might people need when throwing a tournament?
Yeah, so the consoles, TVs, and then most tournaments on a larger scale would be like bring your own controller, but when we host weekly events, sometimes we get new people who don't own the game, have never played the game before, don't have any way to play it, and so we try our best to make sure that we have loaner controllers available for people. And, that's just one way of making sure that basically anybody who walks through the door and is like, what is happening here? And we're like, this is a video game tournament. Like, do you want to come play? Like, and that kind of thing does happen from time to time, which is cool. Other equipment basically comes down to your stream setup. One of the things that has benefited me as a tournament organizer is my full-time job is in IT. And so I have a lot of the knowledge in terms of what it takes to, run a stream, all the different software that you might want to use, the networking equipment, what I guess the hardware requirements are for a PC that you might need to have. I am also a musician, and so like microphones and stuff like that is also something that, I spend a lot of time thinking about. So depending on how much effort you'd like to put into, putting on a really high quality production, we have at times as well prioritized the in-person viewing experience. So sometimes that involves like projectors or just, big TVs that we can share, because especially Smash Bros. Players are very particular about making sure that you're not introducing any input latency. And this is gonna be the same for pretty much any competitive video game. Making sure whatever you're kind of sharing with your audience isn't adding to the competitor's latency, whether that's in person or on stream.
Do you think you can explain, for the people who don't know the technical aspects, what is the latest latency,
There's a period of time from when you click your mouse or type your keyboard to when that input gets sent through the computer and then through that computer into a monitor. And so it's the same for a console, right? And you can actually measure that in milliseconds. And so basically you don't want to put anything that would add additional time between when your button presses on the controller to when that input appears on the actual screen. Even something as small as 20 milliseconds, which is I think it takes 300 milliseconds for you to blink your eyes. So it's crazy to think about, but just those small bits of delay can make a really big difference in the competitive environment.
Yeah, well, thanks for explaining that. How do you coordinate partnerships, sponsors, and just the players in general?
It is just a grind game of emailing as many people as you can and sort of saying here's what we have to offer. We were streaming on channels with a collective of around 200,000 followers on Twitch, and those were partners that we had made. And a lot of that was just kind of word of mouth, people who know somebody within the community. Those kind of partnerships are really, really critical, I think, in the esports industry. It can be challenging because sponsors are a little bit less willing these days to sort of help out, support some of those smaller events that maybe they don't see the return on their investment. And so for us, the challenge is often, how are we going to get the funding? Where is this all going to work from, and kind of go from there.
I'm sad about the sponsors, about the hesitancy.
Maybe they don't see the value in an esports event. On the flip side of that, though, people are seeing esports now as a more legitimate venture. And so from that front, we're continuing to find, creative ways to find sponsors. Local companies are often great ways to get sponsors for events.
What are some of the biggest logistical, challenges you face when coordinating a tournament?
I think moving equipment on a weekly basis is something that we've often struggled with. Are you familiar with those old school CRT TVs?
Yes, I've owned one before.
They're super, super heavy. And so
the big boxes.
And it is not super fun to have to drag those back and forth every single week if we're wanting to host a weekly event, for example. These community events happen because of volunteers, and reducing that time as much as possible is something that's super important.
There was this one time I was running a tournament at the University of Calgary, and I had the space booked out. I talked with some people. I said, okay, we're running an event on this date. We have this space for us to run our tournament. We got there day of, and there's a whole nother event going on already there. Suddenly, we had all these people who are going to be coming in an hour, and we had to figure out how are we going to manage this, because I talked with them, and they said, we made a mistake. This event was booked first. We have to give it to them. So we had to find a new room. We had to, go 2 floors up, move all the stuff.
Brutal. Had to lug so many heavy CRTs up the stairs. That event still ran pretty well. We had 100 people. It was great.
You have to be very flexible, because things will go wrong. You just kind of have to account for the fact that a lot of times things will go wrong. You have to be ready for that.
Being a director generally of whatever you're, an event, anything, you are just a problem solver. That's kind of your job.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get these unfortunate scenarios where, at one of my recent tournaments, for example, we had 2 players playing and the monitor just shut off mid-game. And then that's not either player's fault, and it's just a really, unfortunate situation to be in for the players, and just as a tournament organizer, it feels bad that that happened, right?
Yeah.
But you just try and do your best in the scenario to try and keep it as fair as possible, reset the game to kind of the state it was in before that happened, and you just have to kind of play it by ear and just do your best.
Are there any times you had disruptions during an event?
During Empty Hop, I know Steven had a big predicament where like people were tied, so we didn't know who was going to make it into bracket, and it just wasn't properly thought of beforehand. So it was like, I don't know, like Steven pulled me aside, like, okay, I have to make a call. Somebody is going to be upset, no matter what. Like, what do I do? And it's like, okay, we just have to like think of it from their perspective and go through all the steps and just make sure we can like make the most fair call we can, given that we're extremely busy and have 5 minutes to do this. And that's probably the most flack that event got was for that call. And you just have to learn from it. So Empty Hop 2 won't have that, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely lesson learned from those past experiences is definitely the biggest thing to take away if you're an organizer, right? Sometimes you will make the wrong call, and that's okay. The biggest thing is that you learn from it. If you did make the wrong call, maybe just apologize to the player. It's hard to always get it right.
I don't know, one thing I run into that I dislike is like this competitor just like entered with a tag that like I just don't think is appropriate. Like I don't think it's very cool. I don't like being like a confrontational person, but like sometimes you just like
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, you just have to like pull a person to the side and be like, I'm not putting you into the event unless you change this. And like that's like the law, like that's it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the community safety is like it's our biggest prerogative. And someone doesn't have to break the law for them to like not be allowed at one of my events.
How do you put specific efforts to include, diversity and inclusivity in general?
Esports as a whole has been traditionally a fairly male-dominated. I've been really proud of the steps that we've taken to make both our online communities as well as our in-person events feel really, welcoming to people of all backgrounds, women, people of minority and people who are non-binary, and having representation of those people within our events makes a big difference. And I know that there's still a long ways to go in terms of making sure that everything feels really great no matter who you are, but I think just opening that conversation of saying like, we want this event to be for everybody.
I think one thing that's helped a lot with that in recent years is ASA, which is Alberta eSports Association, nonprofit organization that has been helping enforce those kinds of things. They have more clearly documented details on what you should do if someone is doing certain levels of different kinds of maybe harassment, or maybe they're doing something even more beyond that, right? And what should we do if that comes up, right? So it helps to have that very clear outline of what is the right level of severity of punishment and that sort of thing. If it comes to that, at the end of the day, we're running video game tournaments. It's not a right for you to come here, right? So if we as a tournament organizers are feeling that you're not being respectful of other people, we are allowed to say that, hey, you're not welcome to our events. We want to have this be welcoming for all people coming in. Little things can really make a big difference. So for example, let's say you were running a stream for your tournament, right? And you always put the player tags. It helps to for example, just ask the players what pronouns would you like us to put beside your name, or just for the commentators to know that in advance, right? So just little things like that can really make a big difference for having people feel included as a part of the event.
And yeah, another thing is we always post graphics for the top placers in our tournaments. It's like, oh, do you want your pride flag on it? We don't care. Or whatever country you're from on it. Just it's a lot of little things.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, Smash Bros is such a community-driven thing. It just doesn't function without community. We're here to play a game. We're here to hang out. Whoever you are, you're welcome to take part in that.
So what are your personal aspirations, as a esports coordinator or players?
Me and Steven, we've been working together on a project called Cold Hands Collective, and it's just our nonprofit group.
Basically going to be trying to make these events as affordable and accessible to as many people as possible by becoming a nonprofit organization that is also going to increase our legitimacy with sponsors and the ability to host larger events.
We just want to have consistent Melee for people. I want to leave the scene better than I found it.
Definitely when I run an event, the biggest thing is, you know, because I'm a player too, I want all the players who came there to be leaving saying like, that was an awesome event.
Yeah.
I'm so glad like I came, like whether they're coming, you know, from Calgary or they're coming down from Edmonton. Sometimes we even have players flying out. Like most recently at one of my events, I had a player come down from Washington. I want to really make them all feel like it was worth it to come out for it. And you know, sometimes that involves trying to think of new and creative ways to make this event stand out a little bit. Like at one of my recent big events, we gave people ice cream and homemade waffles. And it's like a small little thing, you might not think of it, but like for a lot of people, they were like, this was like really awesome. I never had something like that at a tournament. And so I just want to keep running more events, just following that sort of thing. And definitely it's just fun for me too. And it's like, you know, if no one else is gonna run it, I'm gonna run it so I can play in it.
Yeah.
So finally, we're gonna ask, like, are there any useful resources that you would recommend to those interested in this field?
You're gonna find lots of different resources out there for event coordinating. A lot of the same principles are gonna apply. Yeah, just making sure if you have a specific goal in mind, make sure that you're, communicating with the people who are in that community, whatever community it is, and they'll be able to tell you kind of the do's and don'ts within that community.
Do not jump into this thing like, hey, I'm running this here, this time, I put all this money into it, you better show up. It's like, no, it doesn't work. You have to go talk to the existing community, and you have to become a part of it, especially just like people can always find me. They can always find me, they can always find Zane, they can always find Steven, they can always DM us like, hey, I'm thinking about running a tournament, what would I need? Like that's the most important thing, I think, is just talk to the elders in the community.
It might seem daunting at first to run a big event or something like that. And that's why you don't have to, you can start small, start with what makes sense to you, ask for help, reach out for help when you need to. There's actually so many people who you'd be surprised how willing they are to help.
It is extremely community oriented. It is a lot of volunteers and just a lot of community members coming together, and that's how things function. It's a community thing.
We would like to thank our guests for sharing valuable information to help us learn more about the world of esports.
And that's the anatomy of esports tournaments. From securing venues to player registration and handling logistics, it's clear that creating a great event takes planning, precision, and teamwork. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jordan Lee. Catch you in the next episode of Total eClips.